In React Router, index routes are helpful whenever you're rendering routes dynamically, like the cat ID route displaying the categories, or when a parent route, like categories, has multiple children and you want to render some default content when URL parameters are not yet provided. For example, on the conference site, navigating to categories displays a blank section below the category links. You have to click on a category to view the heading and sessions below. You can nest an index route to add content to fill the space or even display some default sessions from a category like 3D printing and design. So I'll teach you how index routes work by adding default content for this category's route. In app.js, I'll nest a new route component within the parent categories route. An index route shares the path of its parent. So because of that, index routes do not have a path. Instead, you add an index prop as so. Then, like any route, you add an element prop to set the elements or component you want to render at the parent URL. I'll pass element in H3 with the text, select a category from above. So now this index route will render in the parent categories routes outlet when the URL path is /categories. So over in the browser, navigating to categories renders the nested heading via the outlet. And notice how the heading only renders until we navigate to a child path or when the user hasn't clicked one of the items in the navigation list. So you learned that an index route is a child route with no path that renders by default at the parent route's URL. Think of it as a default child route. And you can nest an index route at any level of your route hierarchy to render elements when the parent matches the URL, but none of its child routes match. Most navigation and URL changes with React Router happen in response to clicking a link. It's a declarative form of navigation that occurs via a link or navlink component, for example. But there are other ways to change the URL imperatively. For example, you may sometimes need to navigate users or change the URL programmatically after a user submits a form or updates specific data in your app, like creating or deleting a user profile or some other record, like a blog post, for instance. React Router's useNavigate hook lets you programmatically navigate, usually in an event handler. So let's see the useNavigate hook in action on our conference site by adding a simple registration form that navigates users to a confirmation page after submitting the form. I've set up the form in the file register.js. It's a function component named register that includes some code to get us started, like a form element containing an input field and a handle submit function that gets called on form submit. And it's using React's useRef hook so that we're able to access the value of the name input field. In app.js, I'll set up a new route for the registration form by first importing the register component with import register from /register. Then add a new route component below the categories route. I'll set the path prop to register, and I'll pass the element prop, the tag for the register component. Next, in header.js, I'll add a new link for the register page to the main navigation using the navlink component. I'll just copy the link for categories, paste it below, and update the text to register and the toProp to /register. All right, let's test the latest changes on the site. And good, the registration route is all set up. To begin navigating programmatically, we'll need to import the useNavigate hook from React Router at the top of register.js. The useNavigate hook returns a function that you call to navigate programmatically from one URL to another. So inside the function, call useNavigate, and assign the return value or function to the const navigate. Next, inside the handle submit event handler, let's call navigate, and you pass navigate the path to navigate the user to when this handle submit function gets called. In this case, I'll pass it the value / confirmed. And that's all we need for now to navigate programmatically. Finally, we do need to declare a new route for this confirmed path. I've also included a simple confirmation component in the project, which will render for this path. So back in app.js, I'll import the confirmation component, then add a route for it just below the register route. I'll set the path prop to confirmed, and I'll pass the element prop the confirmation components tag. All right, let's try it out. Over in the browser, I'll bring up the registration page. I'll add an email like gil@gilh.com and click submit. And the router immediately directs me over to the confirmation page. Good. The use navigate hook is quite useful and provides a straightforward way to navigate programmatically or change the URL when a user performs some action in your app, like a button click, or as you just learned, a form submission. When you use the use navigate hook to navigate programmatically from one URL to another in response to a button click or form submit, for example, you're also able to pass data from one route to another. Use navigate's return function optionally accepts an object as a second argument, which you can use to pass specific data or state from the current route to the one you're navigating to. So I'll teach you how to pass data from the register component and then use React Router's use location hook to access that data in the confirmation component. It would be beneficial to the user if the confirmation page were more personalized, displaying the user's email or other information you might collect from the registration, like a name. And you can do just that by including a state object with the data you want to pass from the register route to the confirmed route or the confirmation component. So here in the register component, I'll pass navigate an object, including a state object within it. And now we've set up a state that will always be associated with this location. I want to pass the user's email as the state, so I'll add a property to the state called email. And since the component is accessing the current value of the email input with useRef, we can pass it into the state with emailref.current.value. And that's all we need to do in our register component to set the data we want to pass to the confirmed route. Now we need a way to access this incoming data from inside the confirmation component and display it on the page. As I mentioned earlier, we can access the location state data via React Router's useLocation hook. The useLocation hook is a function that returns a location object containing information about the current URL. In confirmation.js, let's import the useLocation hook from React Router DOM. Inside the function, if I console.log what useLocation returns, you'll notice that it's an object with properties like path name, search, hash, state, and key. Now, in this case, the only property we need to pay attention to is state because it holds the state set in the register route. So for instance, if I submit the registration form with an email, notice that the state property is now set to an object with an email property, and the value is the email I submitted. So let's destructure the state property from the location object returned by the useLocation hook. And now we can access data in the location state, like the email submitted by the user, with state.email, for example. So in the return statement, I'll add a new paragraph that says, we've sent more details to, then open up a set of curly braces, and within that, display the email with state.email. I'll also wrap the email within strong tags to make it stand out on the page. All right, and now the user's email displays on the page. So now if for any reason a user happens to visit this confirmed route without submitting the form, the application will throw a type error and break because there isn't an email property in state. State would be null. So as a precautionary measure, I'll use conditional rendering to access and display the email only if there's a location state. Within curly braces, I'll use JavaScript's logical and operator as so. This technique is also referred to as short circuit evaluation. Any elements to the right of the double ampersand will render only when there's state in the location object. All right, so you've learned that the use navigate and use location hooks work hand in hand. You can pass and store specific information associated with a location, then return and use that location specific data in your components. Now you're going to get an opportunity to practice what you've learned about passing location state from one route to another with a quick challenge. Let's further personalize the confirmation page by displaying the name submitted by the user in the confirmation message. And these are the steps you'll need to complete for this challenge. First, you'll collect the user's name in the registration form. You can use the email input as a reference for that. Then you'll pass the value of the name input field to the confirmation component via location state. Finally, you'll display the user's name in the confirmation message. You can collect the user's name however you'd like. For example, first name and last name as separate fields, or one input field for the full name. Okay, I'll leave you to it now, and when you're done, you can review how I did it in the following video. Good luck! Now let's go over one solution to the location state challenge. First, I'll add a new label and input element to the registration form to collect the user's full name. I'll copy the label and input for email, paste the new one above, change the text to name, and the value of the name attribute to name. Like the email input, I'll access the value of this name input field using React's useRef So I'll name the reference to this input, nameRef, then add the useRef hook up top by copying the email ref hook and naming this one nameRef. Next, I'll pass the user's name from the register route to the confirmed route as location state via the navigate function. So I'll add a property to our state called name, and like email, pass it into the state with nameref.current.value. Finally, I'll display the user's name on the confirmation page inside the first paragraph by accessing state.name. And to prevent any errors that might break the site if state is null, I'll move this paragraph inside the logical AND expression, and I'll need to place the sibling paragraphs inside a React fragment, like so. All right, now I'll test my changes by typing a name and email into the registration form, then clicking submit, and I see the updated confirmation message showing my name and email. Good. Again, your solution may have looked a little different than mine, and that's totally okay. If you came up with something similar, well done.